and welcome back to English for Specific Purposes Level A2. We are your hosts. I am Mr. Carter.
And I am Miss Sophie. Previously, we have talked about many topics. We have talked about media, we have talked about business, medicine, tourism, and now we are starting a new topic, engineering. But before that, let's look at our agenda as always. Today, we are going to start with a brief introduction. After that, we will learn new vocabulary, which will be followed by reading about superstructures.
After that, we will have a grammar activity, followed by a summary of the entire lesson in which we will discuss everything we learned. And after that, we will have homework.
გამარჯობა, მე სოფო ვარ, ეს კი მისტერ კარტერია. კეთილი იყოს თქვენი დაბრუნება ჩვენს ტელესკოლაში. ჩვენ ბევრ თემაზე ვისაუბრეთ. განვიხილეთ მედია, ვისაუბრეთ ბიზნესზე, მედიცინაზე, ფსიქოლოგიაზე და ტურიზმზე. დღეს კი ვიწყებთ ახალ თემას ინჟინერიას. თუმცა ვიდრე უშუალოდ გაკვეთილზე გადავიდოდეთ, მოდით ერთად შევხედოთ დღევანდელი დღის გეგმას. დღევანდელი ჩვენი გაკვეთილი დაიწყება მოკლე შესავლით, ამის შემდეგ შევისწავლით ახალ სიტყვებს, შემდეგ კი წავიკითხავთ ტექსტს დიდი ნაგებობების შესახებ. ამის შემდეგ გვექნება გრამატიკული სავარჯიშოები, შემდეგ შევაჯამებთ გაკვეთილს, ბოლოს კი მოგცემთ საშინაო დავალებას. Shall we start?
Let's begin.
Mr. Carter, what kinds of problems do civil engineers try to solve?
Well, Miss Sophie, I believe the problems that civil engineers try to solve have to do with roads, buildings, bridges, and other things that humans need to travel or live in.
You are absolutely right. And what are the current problems in the world that can be solved by engineers?
Well, Miss Sophie, there's a lot of problems in the world, but I think the ones that can be solved by engineers have to do with climate change and the environment.
You are absolutely right. Probably these are the biggest problems at the moment.
Definitely. Now, let's look at our first set of vocabulary.
ახლა კი როგორც კარტერმა თქვა, მოდით ერთად შევისწავლოთ ახალი სიტყვები. And our first word is length. Length is a noun and in Georgian it means სიგრძე.
Length is the measurement of something from the longest side. For example, think of a swimming pool. In a swimming race, the swimmers swim from the longest side to the other side and then back. Miss Sophie, I actually have a fun fact about length. Do you know the longest river in the world?
I think I do, Mr. Carter. It's the Nile, right?
You are absolutely right, Miss Sophie. The Nile River is over 6,000 kilometers long. That is as long as from Georgia to Spain.
Wow, I did not know that. Well done. Length, სიგრძე. Length, სიგრძე.
Length,
სიგრძე. Our next word is depth. Depth is also noun and in Georgian it means სიღრმე.
Depth is the distance down from the top to the bottom of something. Once again, let's think of a swimming pool. A swimming pool has depth. You jump in and go down. When you reach the bottom, that is the maximum depth. Depth is pretty much the opposite of height. Miss Sophie, another fun question. Do you know the deepest part of the ocean?
I don't actually. Mariana Trench?
Actually, you do. It is the Mariana Trench, Miss Sophie. Do you know how deep the Mariana Trench is?
Not really, no.
The Mariana Trench is around 11 kilometers deep.
That's really deep.
It is. That's really scary.
Exactly, yeah. Depth, სიღრმე. Depth, სიღრმე.
Depth,
სიღრმე. Our next word is width. Width is a noun and in Georgian it means სიგანე.
Width is the distance from one side to the opposite side, but it is not the longest side. Once again, think of a swimming pool. The length is the long side while the width is the short side. Basically, length is skinny, width is fat. Miss Sophie, do you know the widest river on the planet?
Not really, I'm afraid I don't know.
Miss Sophie, the widest river on the planet is the Amazon. Do you know how wide?
Not really.
It's about 3 kilometers in its shortest width and 6 kilometers in its greatest width.
That's quite wide.
Exactly. It's very big and very powerful.
Height is our next word. Height is a noun, and in Georgian it means simagle.
Height is the measurement of the top of something or being tall. So it's kind of the opposite of depth. With depth, you measure down. With height, you measure up. Miss Sophie, I have 2 questions this time.
Oh no.
Do you know the tallest building in the world?
Okay, it's probably not the Empire State Building.
It's not. It's in Dubai.
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah, I know that. I don't know how it's called. Burj Khalifa?
That's right, Miss Sophie. It's the Burj Khalifa, and it's over 800 meters tall. Now, Miss Sophie, do you know the tallest mountain in the world?
Everest?
You're right, Miss Sophie. Everest is 8,000 meters tall. It is 10 times taller than the tallest building in the world.
That's fascinating. Height, simagle. Height, simagle.
Height.
Simagle. Our next word is measure. Measure is a verb, and in Georgian it means gazomva.
Measure is to discover the exact size or amount of something. So, every word we just talked about is a form of measurement. Height, the form of measuring up. Length, the form of measuring the long side. Width, the form of measuring the widest side. Depth, the form of measuring down.
Measure, gazomva. Measure, gazomva.
Measure,
gazomva. And our next word is weigh. Weigh is a verb, and in Georgian it means atzonva. Weigh, atzonva.
Weigh is to measure the heaviness of a stated amount or the heaviness or lightness of a certain object. Miss Sophie, I have another question for you. Do you know the heaviest man-made object in the world?
I have no idea. Is it connected to military?
It is not, Miss Sophie. The heaviest man-made object on the world is the Great Wall of China, and it is over 700 million kilograms. Think about this, Miss Sophie.
That's crazy.
If you take all the people in Georgia and multiply them by 2, they do still not weigh as much as the Great Wall of China. Isn't that fascinating?
That's great. Weigh, atzonva. Weigh, atzonva.
Weigh,
atzonva. Our next word is a construction, and this is the last word in this set of vocabulary. It is a noun, and it means mshenebloba an nageboba.
Construction is the work of building or making anything, especially a building or bridges. Construction normally has to do with bigger objects. For example, you would construct a house, but you would build a car. Remember, construction relates to bigger objects.
Construction, mshenebloba an nageboba. Construction, mshenebloba an nageboba.
Construction,
mshenebloba an nageboba.
Now, let's move on to an activity where we will match the correct word with the proper definition.
ახლა კი, როგორც კარტერმა თქვა, მოდით გადავიდეთ ლექსიკურ დავალებაზე. ეკრანზე მოცემულია წინადადებები, რომლებიც წარმოადგენს სიტყვების განმარტებებს. ჩვენ ერთად უნდა მოვიფიქროთ, რომელი სიტყვა შეესაბამება რომელ განმარტებას. Shall we start?
Let's begin.
Our first definition is the measurement of something from end to end or along its longest side.
Well, Miss Sophie, the key word in this is longest. So, what of our vocabulary words begins with L? Longest is length.
You are right, Mr. Carter. So, the keyword here is long, and therefore the right answer is the length. Our next sentence is the distance across something from one side to another.
Our keywords here are the distance across. If you are traveling across something, then you are not doing the length. You are doing the width.
You are absolutely right, Mr. Carter. The right answer is width. Our next sentence is the work of building or making something, especially buildings, bridges, etc. Mr. Carter, what do you think is the right answer?
Well, Miss Sophie, I don't think it's a form of measurement because measurement is just measuring something. This involves building. And when it comes to building, the only word that fits is construction.
You are absolutely right. Construction is the right answer. Let's look at our next sentence. The distance from the top to the bottom of something or the quality of being tall. Mr. Carter, can you please look at some key words and tell us what is the right answer?
I'm so glad you asked, Miss Sophie. The key words in this are being tall. When you measure someone that is tall, you measure their height. So the answer must be height.
Let's look at our next definition, the distance down either from the top of something to the bottom or to a distance below the top surface of something.
Miss Sophie, the key words in this are measuring down as well as below. When you think about something going down or going below, the only word you should think about is depth. So, if you are measuring down, you are measuring depth.
You are absolutely right, Mr. Carter. The right answer is depth. And our next sentence reads, to discover the exact size or amount of something. What do you think is the right answer?
I think you should give them a hint, Miss Sophie.
Okay, the hint here is exact size, amount of something. So we need to talk about measuring or finding out, right? What is the exact size of something, which is measure.
Good job, Miss Sophie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. And our last sentence, which is quite obvious, is to have a heaviness of a stated amount or to measure the heaviness of an object. You remember we talked about weighing.
Exactly, Miss Sophie. So this is weigh. And weigh is a verb, and the noun form of weigh is weight. When you measure weight, you weigh something.
You are right. The right answer is weigh.
Now, let's move on to our second set of vocabulary related to our reading about superstructures.
ახლა კი გადავიდეთ ახალ სიტყვებზე, რომელიც ტექსტთან არის დაკავშირებული. Our first word is dam. Dam is a noun and in Georgian it means კაშხალი.
A dam is a wall built across a river's flow that collects all the water in one area. This is done to create water supplies for entire cities, or it is used as a source of electricity.
Dam, კაშხალი. Dam, კაშხალი.
Dam,
კაშხალი. Let's look at our next word now, tunnel. Tunnel is a noun and in Georgian it means გვირაბი.
A tunnel is a long passage underground. It's normally referring to something man-made. Miss Sophie, Do you ever take the metro?
Yes, I do.
Well, Miss Sophie, if that is true, then you travel in a tunnel.
You are absolutely right, Mr. Carter. Tunnel, გვირაბი. Tunnel, გვირაბი. Tunnel, გვირაბი. Our next word is railway. It's fun that you mentioned metro, Mr. Carter, because it's pretty much related. Railway is a noun, and in Georgian, it means რკინიგზა.
Railway are the metal tracks that a train runs on. So, every time you see a train, you know it's running on a railway.
Railway, რკინიგზა. Railway, რკინიგზა. Railway, რკინიგზა. Our next word is surface. Surface is a noun, and in Georgian, it means ზედაპირი.
Surface is the outer part or the top layer of something. So, when you stand on the beach and you look out over the sea or the ocean, all you can see is the surface because you can't see what is underneath the surface.
Surface, ზედაპირი. Surface, ზედაპირი. Surface, ზედაპირი. Our next word is flood. Flood is a verb, and in Georgian, it means დატბორვა.
Flood is when a source of water overflows and spills out. This is normally a very bad thing. Floods can cause lots of damage to cities or environments.
Yeah, floods are really dangerous.
Very dangerous, Miss Sophie.
Flood, დატბორვა. Flood, დატბორვა. Flood, დატბორვა. Our next word is destroy. Destroy is a verb, and in Georgian, it means განადგურება.
Destroy means to damage something so badly that it can never be used again, or if it is used again, it takes a long, long time to repair. Miss Sophie, can you think of some natural disasters that destroy things?
Actually, one that comes to my head is something that you mentioned earlier, floods.
Exactly, Miss Sophie. Floods, tornadoes,
Tsunamis.
Tsunamis, exactly, Miss Sophie. Tsunamis might be the worst natural disaster because they destroy everything.
Destroy, განადგურება. Destroy, განადგურება.
Destroy,
განადგურება. Our next and the last word is solar power. Very important word in today's engineering world.
Definitely.
Solar power means მზის ენერგია.
Solar power is the energy collected by the sun used to produce electricity. In the recent years, solar power has become very popular because it is very environmentally friendly.
Solar power მზის ენერგია. Solar power მზის ენერგია. Solar power მზის ენერგია.
Now, let's move on to our reading activity.
ახლა კი გადავიდეთ კითხვის დავალებაზე. Mr. Carter, you mentioned something about the heaviest man-made structure. So, what is the largest man-made structure that you have been on?
Miss Sophie, to be honest, I haven't been in that many big structures. But while I was in Malaysia, I was in the Petronas Towers, and there are two towers that are both 88 stories tall. It was very beautiful and very impressive.
And how would you feel if you were at the top of a very tall building?
Well, Miss Sophie, I'm not really afraid of heights, so I would love it. I love being able to see big distances, so I think it would be really cool.
What about the tunnel, very deep in the ground?
I think that would be okay as long as I was in the metro.
And what about in a building on the bottom of the sea?
I think that would be very scary, Miss Sophie. I don't want to be in the bottom of the ocean. That's just too deep.
You are right, it is.
Now, let's move on to our reading activity in which we will read about superstructures.
ახლა კი გადავიდეთ კითხვის დავალებაზე, სადაც წავიკითხავთ ტექსტს დიდი ნაგებობების შესახებ. The Transatlantic Tunnel. For those afraid to fly by planes across the oceans have designed a new way to travel. So it is a magnetic railway tunnel which will be used to travel from New York to London, and the journey will take only 45 minutes. This is an expensive project which will face great difficulties in construction. This railway tunnel across the ocean will not be above the sea level. It will actually be around 45 meters below the surface of the water, and it will take a long time to fully finish. If it is built, it will be the largest and the most expensive engineering project in the history of the world.
Solar and wind farm project. Huge solar and wind farms are built in the Sahara Desert from Morocco to Saudi Arabia. The aim is to provide electricity and to solve some of the world's energy problem. There is a lot of intense sunlight in the Sahara Desert region, and this could provide huge amounts of solar power. In addition, the sandstorms of the area can create huge amounts of wind power, which can be used to provide energy. There are some problems, however. Bad weather could destroy parts of the farms, and lots of water will be needed to clean them every day.
The Belo Monte Dam. The Brazilian government is planning to build a dam which will be the third largest in the world. The dam will provide 11,000 megawatts of energy, which the Brazilian government hopes will help Brazil's economy to improve. However, it is a very expensive project. It will cost $18 billion to construct. There is more bad news. The dam will destroy much land by flooding a large area, and 16,000 people that live there will have to find new home. Despite all this, the dam could have great future benefits for the Brazilian people and its economy.
Now, let's move on to our reading activity, where we will read sentences and determine if they are true or false based on what we read in the text.
ახლა კი როგორც კარტერმა თქვა, გადავიდეთ კითხვის დავალებაზე. ეკრანზე მოცემულია წინადადებები. ჩვენ ერთად უნდა განსაზღვროთ ეს წინადადებები შეესაბამება თუ არ შეესაბამება ტექსტს. თუ წინადადება შეესაბამება ტექსტს, მაშინ ვამბობთ true, ხოლო თუ წინადადება არ შეესაბამება ტექსტს, მაშინ ვამბობთ false. And our very first sentence is, the railway tunnel will be over the sea.
Miss Sophie, a tunnel is never over anything. So I think this is false because tunnels go under the ground or under the sea.
You are absolutely right, Mr. Carter. This sentence is false. Let's look at our next sentence. It is cheap to build the Transatlantic Tunnel. Mr. Carter, what do you think? Is this sentence true or false?
Well, Miss Sophie, I don't remember the exact amount, but building any structure that goes across an ocean cannot be cheap.
You are absolutely right, Mr. Carter. We said that it's quite expensive project, which makes this sentence false. Let's look at our next sentence now. The aim of the solar and the wind farm project is to provide electricity. What do you think, Mr. Carter? Is this sentence true or false?
This sentence is true because solar energy and wind energy serve one purpose: to provide electricity for homes and buildings.
You are absolutely right. This sentence is true. Let's look at our next sentence. Construction of the dam won't do any harm to the environment. What do you think, Mr. Carter?
I think this sentence is false, Miss Sophie. Unfortunately, as great as dams are at providing electricity for people, they can harm the environment very bad.
You are absolutely right.
Now, let's move on to our grammar activity.
ახლა კი გადავიდეთ გრამატიკის დავალებაზე. Huge solar and wind farms are built in the Sahara Desert from Morocco to Saudi Arabia.
Miss Sophie, I see the words are and built are highlighted. Can you please tell me why?
Because these words show passive voice. მოცემულ წინადადებაში სიტყვები are built გამოხატავს ვნებით გვარს. We often use passive voice when we prefer not to mention who or what does the action because, for example, it's not known, or we just don't want to mention, or because maybe it's not important. For example, new bridges are built in our city every year. We often use passive so that we can start a sentence with the most important or most logical information. For example, the city is destroyed. We also use passive voice when we want to talk or write more formally or when we want to use more scientific language. New methods of construction are discovered by engineers. We can mention the doer of the action by using preposition by at the end of the sentence. For example, the bridge is built by engineers. The passive voice is made with the subject plus verb to be plus past participle plus by and plus object. For example, I am informed about the updates, or the work is done by the engineers. In order to form a negative of the passive voice, we need to take subject plus negative of the verb to be plus past participle plus by plus object. For example, the construction of the tunnel is not finished by engineers. If we want to form the question of the passive form, we need to take the verb to be plus subject plus past participle plus by and plus object. Is the research done by scientists? Now let's move to a grammar activity in which we will put the verbs in a correct form. Our first sentence is, every year several prizes give to the best students. The answer will be, every year several prizes are given to the best students. English blank speak in many countries all over the world. English is spoken in many countries all over the world. Houses not destroyed by the flood in the sea. Houses are not destroyed by the flood in this area.
Now, since we have finished grammar, that brings us to the summary of our entire lesson.
ახლა კი ერთად შევაჯამოთ გაკვეთილი.
First, we begin with vocabulary. After that, we had a reading about superstructures. And finally, we had grammar about the passive voice.
And now it's time to move to our homework. For your homework, we would like to write a paragraph about a superstructure you have ever seen. You can submit your homework on the address given on the screen. Do not forget to use the vocabulary and the grammar that we have taught you today.
We provided a template for you in case you need a little bit of help, but always, please do not copy. We know you can do better. Well, Miss Sophie, I think that brings us to the conclusion of our lesson.
You are right, Mr. Carter. Next lesson, we are going to talk about engineering again. Don't miss the chance. See you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.